Is it worse to accept a bad idea or throw away a good one? These types of trade-off crop up everywhere, in science, medicine, business, justice, and even everyday decisions. In a court case, is it worse to convict an innocent person or let a guilty person go free? In a medical study, is it worse to be lenient and say a treatment works when it doesn't, or be strict and conclude it doesn't work when it actually does? To get closer to the truth, we need to pay attention to these two common mistakes. We don't want to believe things that are false, but we don't want to reject things that are true. Where should we set the bar for evidence? If we're too skeptical, setting the bar too high, we'll dismiss things that are correct. If we set the bar too low, we'll end up believing things that just aren't true. In the 1760s, the English legal scholar William Blackstone argued that when it comes to justice, we should be especially careful of wrongful convictions. As he put it, it is better that 10 guilty persons escape than that one innocent suffer. In other words, we should set the bar high enough that it's very hard for an innocent person to get caught in a bad decision. But not all societies have shared this mindset. Some 20th century communist regimes flipped the balance, declaring it was better to kill 100 innocent people than let one guilty person go free. Science and medicine also face this balancing act. Take cancer screening, for example. We don't want to set the bar too high and miss useful signals, but we don't want to set it too low and put lots of healthy people through unpleasant follow-up testing. Similar trade-offs exist when testing new treatments. It can be difficult to run very large studies, so we must choose how to manage potential errors. Over time, the world of research has developed traditions around where to set thresholds for evidence. For example, researchers typically design clinical trials in a way that carries a 5% chance of a false positive. In other words, saying a treatment is effective when it isn't, and a 20% chance of a false negative. In other words, missing a treatment that's effective. It means we don't want to say a treatment doesn't work when it does, but we really don't want to conclude it works when it doesn't. You can even see this balancing act in fact-checking online. Take community notes on X. Users write notes to add context to posts, and others rate these notes as helpful or unhelpful. The best notes get shown with the original post, and users with high rating scores get to write their own notes. But there's a twist in the scoring system. If you set the bar too high and incorrectly conclude a note should be ignored, you lose 1 point. If you set the bar too low and wrongly suggest a note is helpful, you lose 2 points. The system penalizes you twice as much for falsely adding a note and interfering with the user experience than for failing to add a note that should have been there. This same problem of balancing two errors applies when fighting misinformation. A lot of current efforts focus on reducing belief in false content. If we overcorrect, we risk a second error, undermining belief in things that are actually true. After all, the easiest way to never fall for misinformation is to simply never believe anything. When I supervise students new to research, I often see them go through a transition in their attitudes to scientific truth. At first, they treat published academic papers like sacred texts, peer-reviewed in prestigious journals written by professors, and therefore correct. Then they learn how flawed and sometimes fraudulent some of these papers can be. For example, in 2024, a landmark piece of research on Alzheimer's was retracted after it emerged that images in the paper had been manipulated. Suddenly, everything becomes suspicious. Nothing can be trusted. This isn't a new problem. A century ago, mathematician Henri Poincaré warned that there are two easy shortcuts in life. We can simply doubt everything or believe everything. Both save us having to grapple with the evidence in front of us. Eventually, students realize that although we'll never have total certainty, we can build enough confidence in what we uncover for it to be genuinely useful. The ability to agree on a shared reality, even if it's occasionally flawed, is fundamental for science and medicine. It's also an essential part of democracy and justice. But that means agreeing where to set the bar and how to hold it steady in the face of excessive belief and over-skepticism.